Welcome to our webinar of the series Research Doesn't Stop Now. We are keeping on with our activities, having a webinar each and every Wednesday until the 14th of July. It is an immense pleasure for me to host, an internal speaker today, it's Valeria Pica, and we have Alessandro Crociata chairing the webinar. And this is quite important because we're gonna talk about a research project about which Alessandro, or I think also will tell you more, which is quite important for the group. So it is the DISCE program. So it's important that also external people know something about this project. So I think this is an important opportunity to give also external visibility to an important piece of research that, in particular, some of us performs internally. Having said these few words, I wish to the speaker and to the chairman good luck for this webinar, and I'll leave the word to Alessandro for a more dedicated introduction of the work of the day. Okay, so have a good webinar, everybody.
Thank you, Sandro, for introducing the webinar. Today, as Sandro well introduced, we have a talk about a mixed method project funded by the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program. The project is DISCE, and the acronym stands for Developing Inclusive and Sustainable Creative Economies. Valeria Pica will talk about such project, so I don't take more time and space, but I will just to introduce Valeria, that is a postdoctoral research fellow in the social science area here in CCIs. She has a long working experience in cultural, social, and economic development, with a focus on regeneration trajectories of small villages and peripheral areas. Now, Valeria is currently working at this project, focusing on the role of CCIs, cultural and creative industries, for social and economic development. I will give you just the rule of the game to attend this seminar. The talk will stand for 1 hour, more or less, and then we have a question time of 1 hour as well. The webinar is recorded, so if you are not comfortable with recording, please move to our GSSI YouTube channel that hosts the seminar in a different way. So Valeria, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alessandro, and thanks for this possibility to disseminate the actions that we are going to produce for the DISCE project. I'm going to share my screen now for the presentation. And actually, as we were saying, this is a first attempt to propose a new taxonomy on cultural and creative industries through a syncretic approach. We are working on this project, the DISCE project, and the seminar would like actually to share with you all the first ideas, the first proposals that we have on that, and then to try to start a discussion, a debate on the outcomes that we have reached up to now. Okay. So today we are going to talk about the DISCE project. For those of you who are not familiar with this project, and to introduce actually the main objectives of the consortium and then of the project itself. We'll make an overview of the main CCIs classification at the European level, and eventually we'll talk and examine together the proposal for the new taxonomy, starting from the domains of CCIs. So as Alessandro just said, the acronym DISCE stands for Developing Inclusive and Sustainable Creative Economies. It is a EU Horizon 2020 funded project, which main objectives are the improvement and enhancement of growth, inclusivity, and sustainability of CCIs. By researching also on new business model and inclusive growth, and providing tools for a cultural development encompassing GDP and human flourishing. The main the project, the DISCE project, aims at unlocking the potential of CCIs. And basically, the contribution that we would like to offer to the academia is a more comprehensive understanding of CCIs and the sector, thanks to the definition of improved indicators at national and EU level. Then offering also the to creative workers a panorama of career perspectives, challenges, training needs, but also higher education that might be useful for future creative workers in EU. And as said, one of the main focuses of DISCE project is inclusivity. And for this reason, we are paying particular attention to all the issues of inequality and exclusion, both at education but job profession topics. Trying actually to overcome these issues. Other elements that we are working on are basically the definition of new business models, both at firm and individual level, and then elements concerns as well the logics in relation of sustainability of the sector, examining the role of CCIs and the processes of inclusive and sustainable growth. The consortium of the DISCE project is composed of 4 research centers, the University of Turku, the King's College in London, the Gran Sasso Science Institute, and the Stockholm School of Economics, and 2 partners dedicated to communication and dissemination of the actions. The University of Turku is the principal investigators of this project. And together with these partners, we defined a methodology and a framework within the possibility that will give us the possibility actually to examine, observe, and analyze cultural and creative sectors all over Europe. This is a mixed method research with both quantitative and qualitative methods. We are working now at the quantitative mapping and the case studies that are almost completed. And in the next fall, we will start the interactive workshops and the co-creation lab. This is still basically the structure of our methodology. The case studies cover the basically northern, central, and southern Europe in the countries of the of the partners, of the project partners, but also including a few other geographical areas such as Hungary, Netherlands and Belgium, where we found actually interesting case studies. Basically, these are 10 European cities selected among second and third tier cities, excluding capital ones. Eurostat data on regional GDP growth, labor market and unemployment by gender, age and ethnicity, as well as a risk of poverty and social exclusion at level of NUTS 2, regions are among the indicators used for the selection that led to this choice. GSSI is involved in the work package 2, so in the definition of a new identification in the mapping and statistics of cultural and creative industries. And basically, the first question that we had to work with, and the key challenge is related to actually what we mean by CCIs, because there are really a plethora of definition, and it's not always so easy to work with them. So we started considering the definition of the European Commission that stress a major difference between the industries producing and distributing services and goods on the one side, and industries using culture as an input, but having functional outputs. So this is basically the main difference between cultural industries and creative industries. But looking at this definition, some questions arise in relation to the culture-based CCIs, for instance, or indirect economic effects, such as those given by tourism, and basically also how to measure them. So all these definitions adopted in academia in the past 20 years led to a classification that is obviously contingent upon the effect on the economy. And moreover, to generate robust statistics, we need to agree on definitions and develop manageable policy objects. Identifying CCIs is also related to the tension between a sector-specific creativity and, on the other side, creativity embedded in all sectors. The question is referred to definition based on the product of the firm or the skills of individuals. And so on the one side, we have a product-based approach focuses on the symbolic value. And this is also the kind of definition that will be developed in the UNCTAD classification that we will see in a short while. And on the one side, we have the concept of creative class that does not refer to any specific sector, individual, but basically to individuals having a creative idea that is quite generic. So the question is who can be included in this definition, being so broad and so generic. The other problem, the other issue that we met while studying and trying to design a new taxonomy is also the different definition that we have found and the many different approaches that are usually and widely adopted at European level. Here you see a really a synthesis of the most widely used ones, starting from the Department of Culture, Media and Sports model that was developed in 1998 in in UK, that was basically focusing on individual creativity, skills, and talent. Then one of the most important also for our discourse, the one that we will develop later, is the concentric circles model by Thorsby, that focuses on dynamics of cultural transmission within a cultural production. The WIPO copyright model is basically actually referred to copyright protection of an output or of an industry. The American for the Arts model has been included also because it opened to a different perspective, and it is basically referred to businesses involved with the production or distribution of the arts. Then we have the UNESCO Institute for Statistics model that is useful when talking about international trade. And another pretty interesting one for our discourse is the symbolic text model that is more referred to industrial production and dissemination of symbolic text, such as advertisement, for instance. Then here you have the European Statistical System Network on Culture framework that provides a categorization that has been basically the base for all the other classification and development in this sector, focusing on the main domains, functions, and dimension of CCIs that are definitely useful and proper categorization to organize also our classification. We go back to Thorsby model because, as we said, it has been really the base for basically for all the other models that at the European level has been developed. And as you may see here, Thorsby distinguishes cultural industries more oriented towards cultural value and creative industries more oriented to higher commercial content. We have a core creative industries sector that is the one that comprehends all the others, and then the other core creative industries, the wider cultural industries, and then the related industries. This categorization will be repeated and replicated basically in all the other classification. For instance, if we go and see the KEA model, as you may see, is definitely a replica of the Thorsby one. But here you have, they added a few more sectors, such as tourism or luxury brands or user-generated content that open another field of interest that we will see better later. The Nesta model makes another important step ahead, stressing the cross-sectoriality of the sector. And this is quite important because we have to consider that all these sectors, actually all the CCIs, both in the creative industries or in the cultural industries, are closely tied together. UNCTAD, that we have already mentioned, is definitely one of the most interesting for us and probably one of the most important because it helped us at the very first moment of the DISCE project to find a model that could better fit the criteria, enabling us to harmonize data. As you may see, this model divides CCIs in 4 main groups: heritage, arts, media, and functional creations, stressing anyway the correlation among all these groups. At the very beginning, it was actually the most helpful to us to harmonize and for sampling purposes. But eventually, we noted that, as well as for the other models, also the UNCTAD classification was lacking of those items that could easily measure sustainability and inclusivity, that are actually the main focuses of our research. So we had to reorganize this model and start looking at other classification that could help us in this task. For this reason, then, we started looking at other and that could adopt a syncretic approach. And so we were searching and we were looking at the Santagata work made in 2009, where we have an element that was not comprehended in the previous one, such as the tangible culture. Santagata also includes tourism that, as we have said, was part also of the first KEA and also the Thorsby model. But this diverges from our intent. So basically, we were focusing on the tangible culture section, where we have also food and gastronomy, on industrial design and artistic crafts, that were quite interesting for us. And we will see why in a moment. More recently, we have this development of the first KEA model, where you have and you can observe something that is pretty interesting for us, because this new classification of KEA not only highlights again the cross-sectoriality of the whole sector, of the all CCIs sectors, but it also stresses something pretty interesting: the need of a policy for intellectual property in relation to media and new media. And in terms of inclusivity and sustainability, this is a crucial point. So what we are going to do now, what happens now? We founded and we highlighted a few challenges. First of all, the fragmentation of all the definition and classification of the cultural and creative industries. And it also leads to a lack of up-to-date and complete databases that represent a pretty important issue in our research. We are looking for finest territorial scale because this could be the one that allow us to analyze and to examine this sector in a more specific way, also offering a new overview that at the moment are totally lacking. This SHAPE project is also aiming at the to reframe the understanding of inclusive and sustainable growth. And as we said also at the very beginning, the idea of inclusivity and sustainability and cultural development is a way to contribute to human flourishing, combining together and considering elements of the same structure, the cultural, the social, and the economic development. In order to draw then this new taxonomy, we started focusing on the perimeter of CCIs. And we were looking at strong policy implication that could help us to measure and compare CCIs with other sectors, but always considering the key elements of this project, and namely sustainability and inclusivity. We had to also observe the boundaries of this new taxonomy, and we started actually observing what could be actually the synergies for a competitive, inclusive, and strong system and international level, considering that society based on innovation and inclusion have a specific role and have a sort of main task, considering a culture in a decisive role. That also goes back to the statement of the Lisbon process, where culture was meant as a catalyst for creativity. So considering culture as a pivotal element for innovation and inclusion, and culture also as a catalyst for creativity, we had to redesign and reframe actually all the industries that were referred to this sector. To reperimeter the economy of culture, then we decided to use these three main elements. So cultural heritage, tangible culture, media, and new media. And these are elements that we tried to get from the UNCTAD model, from the Santagata model, and the Thorsby model. In this way, we could actually consider culture both as a tangible and intangible, but also as a dynamic and propulsive capital. We didn't consider, and we tried in a certain sense to unbundling this model in order to catch and pick up what was more fitting for our purposes. The three pillars that we have considered in designing this new taxonomy are basically the promotion of diversity in CCIs as a way actually to make circulate cultural expression. Then considering CCIs as a driver of economic growth, as we said, also in terms of job opportunities for creative workers, or different job opportunities for creative workers, and then CCIs as a base of a development pathway for human flourishing in terms of social, economic, and cultural development. So we used the main EU official statistics, and we tried actually to compare labor surveys, population censuses, and so on. And in this way, this model could help us at improving the statistical data, both at quantitative and qualitative methods, which are the 5 sections that we have taken into account actually to redesign a new taxonomy. We have used the 4 main groups already proposed in the UNCTAD classification, so heritage, arts, media, and functional creation, and new media. To these 4, we added tangible culture, as already said, just taken from the Santagata classification, that comprehends wine and food industry and repositionate actually the other sections, the other groups such as arts and crafts, fashion, design, and graphic. To give you a more schematic idea of what we have done, here you have industries and sectors, both for the UNCTAD and the Santagata classification, where you can see a few differences in terms of sectors included in the different industries. The main difference between the two classifications is actually the presence in the Santagata classification of tangible culture and tourism that are not considered in the UNCTAD classification. Combining them together and trying to get what was more useful and what fitting actually our purposes, then we propose this classification, just avoiding the tourism section. So what is actually important here for us to propose and to observe is in the starting from the heritage group, you can see the first sector is GLAM, that is an acronym standing for Galleries, Libraries, Archives and Museums. And this actually, this group includes actually also the cultural education activities, as already stated in the classification of Thorsby, for instance. You have heritage sites, education and training, and we also had the botanical gardens and zoos to stress a higher attention on the sustainability process. For tangible culture, actually here you have fashion, design. We had the taste industry, namely food and wine, and art and craft. All the tangible culture and the reconfiguration of this area provides a more comprehensive classification according to us. And the inclusion of functional creation and new media gives us also the possibility to consider the creation of digital content in a system that could provide sustainability to the creative workers and extending participation in the whole process. Namely, if we consider actually that creative content and the creation of creative content and the dematerialization of the whole industries are more and more dominant in this sector, one of the main issues here is actually the way to interpret and to protect, in a certain sense, intellectual property that cannot be physically protected because there are not physical or tangible products. This is actually the main reason we added tangible culture and we expanded the functional creation and new media to give a more, a broader definition and differentiation between what we said at the very beginning, the cultural industries and creative industries according to the European Commission definition. In this way, we have a larger understanding of what dematerialization of culture and creative goods could be, and what are also other elements in the tangible culture group that could be more coherent in our time, and also in the sustainability and inclusivity criteria. Why? Because as we see now in these, this is a rough, obviously, diagram and graphic of the new taxonomy. We have actually different elements here that comprehend together what Thorsby could consider as a core of the arts, so the art section, what are actually the other industries related to the core of the art. There are basically media and tangible culture. And then we have the other industries, so related to the heritage and then the functional creation and new media sector. In terms of inclusivity and sustainability, that is actually our main task in this project, and the main focus on which we are orientating our reflections for a definition of a new taxonomy. We basically had to consider these three new sectors in a certain sense, not totally new, but redesign them, because the intellectual property and the taste industry are new, referred to the previous classification. The creation of digital contents was already considered in Thorsby and in KAA classification, for instance, but not in relation to the items of sustainability and creativity. So we have now these three main sections that we have to discuss and we have to examine and observe better. But this is the starting point, actually, that we have for a new classification, where we consider intellectual property both as an element related to inclusivity and sustainability. Basically because it is part of process where creative workers can be guaranteed in their own work and in their own creation. As we said, actually, the dematerialization of culture offers new ways of understanding of CCIs and a new way of consider this sector in the 21st century. The intellectual property is including also all those creative workers dealing with intangible works. And this is the reason why we stressed on the difference between tangible sectors and intangible sector. Food and wine industry instead are referred more to inclusivity in terms of actually possibility to expand these sectors to a broader to different job opportunities, but mainly and more specifically to sustainability, because we thought that the whole taste industry could be a really interesting sector to study and to observe environmental and production sustainability in relation to standards, promotion of the territories, and then work ethics as well. So the starting idea of what we tried actually to, what we would like also to discuss with all of you in this first attempt to a new taxonomy of CCIs is the idea that intellectual property rights are not only linked to changes in market conditions, but they are specifically understood as a means by which creative workers can achieve standards of inclusivity and sustainability in their works. So this is our first proposal. And going back to the graphic that we started designing, and as we said, this is a first attempt, so we have not still proposed here the cross sectoriality, but obviously they are all interrelated. In this first graphic, you have only the 5 sections and the item that we would like to add in each section. So our proposal is also meant to start a debate and then to see how or if there are more elements that we have to consider, both in terms of inclusivity, sustainability, and growth for the CCIs sectors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Valeria, for your effective and really fast presentation. So now we have our question time, and we give normally priority to students and then to other participants or attendees to put their question on. So if you have question, you are welcome. Okay.
Is there a question in the chat, Alessandro? I don't know. No.
Actually, in the chat there is also only a message from our YouTube collaborator, and from YouTube there are no questions in this moment.
I don't know if there are no other question. Could I just raise a point? So I'm not definitely a PhD student, but I mean, I'm waiting for PhD students to warm up and possibly pose their question. I might break the ice. So this is very interesting research project, and also the kind of work that you have been doing in classifying this industry, these sectors, as of absolute importance, because as also sort of map to then collect data, you know, with more specificity in mind. So creative industry or whatever, right? When instead you actually have a taxonomy, this is an important map to then operationalize future empirical work. Having said that, sorry if I might have lost something in preparation, but in case, please be patient with me and repeat if you already said. Is there a sort of mapping between the typologies of a creative industry that you have identified and their, say, environmental impact or environmental...
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. For a moment, I lost your words.
This is quite strange. We are close to each other in the room.
We are very close, actually.
Yeah, so I might better come to you and pose your question in person. No, so I'm gonna repeat the question. The question is, do you plan to consider, or have you already considered whether there is a mapping between the features of this creative industry on the one end and their environmental impact on the other end? So does, you know, this issue that environmental sustainability is important also in this kind of industry, is important across the board. But I think that here also there's a certain issue for environmental sustainability. So do you have in mind to create a link between, the different typologies of an industry and the different extent of environmental impact? Is that an issue that you plan to consider, or you have already considered to a certain extent?
So yes, when we were thinking at a new taxonomy and a way actually to redesign classification of CCIs, due to the fact that sustainability is one of the main focuses of the DISCE project, the environmental sustainability was one of the main part of the discussion. This is also the reason why we added in the heritage section also the botanical gardens and zoo, meant as a way to observe how we can talk about environmental sustainability. This is a first part of the discussion. On the one side, actually, sustainability was also considered in the, for instance, in the, you know, that creative workers are probably one of the most, one of the largest part of the job professionals linked to mobility. And the idea actually to have actually a correlation between the creative workers' mobility on the one side and environmental sustainability on the other side is also part of the discussion. So we are working on that, and actually also in the qualitative research, in the interviews that we are having with artists, with policymakers and students in the 10 cities, part of the research, this aspect has been stressed many times because the sustainability is also linked to the possibility the creative workers and cultural workers have to find proper job opportunities in their own country. So it's also linked to an economic issue. The fact that for many times and for a long time actually, but in somehow even today, all creative or culture related job professions are underestimated. And then in terms of economic possibilities or economic recognition, make a living for creative workers and cultural workers is definitely one of the most difficult aspects of their profession. And this has been quite evident in all the cities where we have conducted our researches. So sustainability in terms of environmental issues is a part of the discussion, but the most important part of the discussion is linked to the economic sustainability of the sector and creative workers. And somehow they are related, interrelated, because they have to actually move from one side to the other in order to find job opportunities. But this is also, yes, a pretty interesting point to develop.
Yeah, I got that. So this is actually an important linkage. So that which passes through the mobility of creative workers and the sustainability of their commuting or their transport and so. And this, I think, connects immediately to the extent to which these workers can act in a digital way. So it opens up an immediate gate towards the extent to which this kind of industry are digitalized or not, right? So which brings into the issue also digital infrastructure, digital gaps, and so on and so forth, right? So I think this is another issue which gets into the picture quite easily.
Exactly. This is the reason why we also stressed so much to the creation of digitalized content in our taxonomy, because not only due to the pandemic, because obviously in the past year, this has been probably the only, if not the main, if not only the only way actually artists could interact with their audience. And it opens a pretty broad debate on how to protect and how to sustain this work. If you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, almost all museums or large museums all over Europe, but not only, they offered for free their content or virtual tours or any other spectacles or anyway, actions that they were providing to their audience. In a state of emergency, it can be also understood, but it cannot be obviously the way to guarantee to creative workers their income. If you consider also all the festivals, art festivals that have been postponed or cancelled last year, that now are actually trying to recreate their own fidelization actually with their audience. It is also part of this debate. And almost all the festivals, the art festivals, still now, so in 2021, offer a digitalized version, an online version of their activities. And now they are on demand, and you pay a fee to participate in these festivals. But there's also another issue in these terms, because what is the proper fee to ask for this kind of cultural consumption? And if it is sustainable in time, both for artists and for cultural organization. So we still don't know that. So there are many issues related to sustainability in this sector.
Thanks a lot for your kind reply. Thank you very much.
Other question from the audience? Well, I try. It's very peculiar for me to ask a question to Valeria, since I'm involved in the DISCE project as well. By the way, as you told us, the perimeter of CCIs, or in general of culture and creative economy, is an ongoing debate, and that the DISCE project added value is to consider two categories, such as inclusivity and sustainability, that are at the center of this debate, but that suffers from a sort of a rhetorical process. No? So once again, what was the main challenges you faced in trying to classify CCIs, coping with these two categories that have a huge extension of meaning? This is my first question. And the second question is, what will be developed after this taxonomy, this work?
So, well, the main challenges when we talk about the definition and the share of the meaning of inclusivity and sustainability have been quite evident when we started actually interviewing the actors of our territory. In Italy, as you have seen during the presentation, the two case studies are basically concentrated in L'Aquila and Treviso. Also, the idea to have two medium-sized cities that are not capital of cultures in a certain sense, but that have a potential to develop their cultural soul, has been seen in a completely different way when talking with people involved in the creative production, or cultural production, and people instead involved in the governmental or policy structures. Basically, artists or students involved in the creative production, so in the creative industries, basically, they see inclusivity as a possibility to work together with other artists and to have actually the possibility to melt together all the arts. What is definitely missing in these in cities like L'Aquila and like Treviso, but as we have heard also from our colleagues in other European countries, are basically spaces where they can work together. And inclusivity here, at least in the area of L'Aquila, is also referred to the possibility to express and to talk about different kinds of art expression, not only referred to the tradition, but also to the contemporary world. So there's a kind of stigma of contemporary artists, and for this reason they do not feel included in the cultural system of the city. So probably what is needed is then to have the possibility to have more action or moment of dialogue and mutual knowledge. And this is strictly and closely tied to the sustainability process, because everything that is linked to the contemporary art world, it seems to be less funded. It seems that you have less grants or less funding opportunity from the artist's point of view. When you talk instead with policymakers or government representatives, they see inclusivity and sustainability in a different way, because it's on the one side, their idea is then to include all social stages in the art sector and in the conception of art section. And then from sustainability to guarantee to the largest part of the population of the community the possibility to enter museums for free or participate to activities for free. So the ideas and the meanings of inclusivity and sustainability are totally different when you talk to artists or when you talk to policymakers. And this is our challenge now, to make them meet and to give this larger overview and panorama, really an extension of the meanings, as you were saying, of inclusivity and sustainability. Because it seems from the interviews that we have made until now that they really talk two different languages. And the taxonomy that we are developing now aims at really redefining the ideas and the meanings of, especially of intellectual property, and in terms, as we said before, both of inclusivity and sustainability, but also the possibility to give a tool for reflection and a tool for developing a new system, a new art, cultural ecosystem in the area of L'Aquila, at least for our actual intent here of the GCSI.
Thank you, Valeria, for your answer. There is a question from one of our attendees, Alessandra De Renzi, that is actually our PhD students. Alessandra asked for have you included in your analysis the different types of legal form these CCIs can assume? First, and the second, and this could in some sort of way impede for or facilitate recognition from public administration and access to funding or representativeness in policy making debate.
Okay, yes, so the legal forms of CCIs has been taken into account, especially for the last part of the part of the taxonomy that we developed and so referred to intellectual property. So basically we looked at the EPO, so the European Patent Office that gives us the statement actually for intellectual property. And in this way, we tried actually to redesign what we needed for our taxonomy. The legal forms, I don't know if you intend only in these terms of intellectual property, or which forms actually you are thinking at. If you could also just share with us actually this idea. But in terms of recognition, yes, consider that at least in the area of L'Aquila, and in Treviso, where we are actually working more specifically to this project, the public administrations have been involved in the research, and the approach they have is basically to facilitate, as we can say, or to be in favor mainly of the big entities rather than the small entities, because it gives a, how to say, a broader effect of yes, advertisement or input in terms of visibility and yes, visibility for the public administration. So basically, there's not really a yes, a specific interpretation of this from the public administration. If you, now I see you in the frame. Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really, really interesting. The question that I posed was more related to two topics. First of all, the fundings. So, for example, I'm thinking about all public fundings that to access them, you need to be recognized under our law, the civic code, for example. And when I was talking about representativeness, I was thinking about like a topic very dear to Sandro and Alessandra about innovation, for example. For example, when the policymaker need to talk to representatives, like local stakeholders and everything, sometimes they ask these sort of groups to be recognized under the civil law, say, for example, I don't know, Confindustria, say, for example. So what I was thinking is whether in your analysis you consider the first part of your CCI, I mean, culture and creative, what about the industry part? You see what I mean? Like, are they enterprises or not? You see, because this could be a problem sometimes, you know, for the sustainability you were talking about. You see what I mean?
Yeah. No, actually, you're right, and thanks for this clarification. The well, the funding process is definitely one of the most difficult for the CCIs. It's also when if you consider that the same terms actually CCIs is used quite at the same with the same meaning of cultural and creative economy. So there's not a proper understanding of the differences. So this is something that we will take into account a little bit more in depth. Actually, we will analyze in depth this correlation between fundings and sustainability. Also because, at least for the, I can tell you, for the Italian system, I'm not really so into the other countries' partner systems, legal systems, but this is something that we can share with them as well. You have an issue of representativeness, especially for the individual creative workers. Because if you are an institution, if you are a legal body, also a small association or a small cooperative, you are much more represented rather than you are an individual creative worker. So this is again, I guess, both in terms of, so representativeness is both in terms of inclusivity and sustainability, because on the one side, you have actually you as an artist are recognized, even if you are an individual body, but on the other side, actually, also in terms of funding, you have an issue of representativeness.
Say, for example, social protection, for example. Yeah. You see what I mean?
Yeah. No, this is really interesting. Actually, another point that could be also linked to these elements of representativeness and social protection or social recognition as well, because we are also in this field. And what actually almost all the artists I have met required was a space that where they could meet other artists or work together with other artists, because it's also a matter of funding. Not all creative workers can afford the rent of a studio, an atelier, and so on. So having a space for them to work, and that could be given actually by the municipality. Actually, almost all of the interviews I've made were stressing on this element, the lack of spaces, and the lack of spaces is also interrelated to the lack of funding and the lack of representativeness. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Let's give some rooms to other questions if there are. Don't be shy. So otherwise, Valeria, if you
there's a question.
Okay. So question from Amica Campini. I don't know if I pronounced it well. The name from Malawi. And the question is, can developing countries adopt the same mapping model of culture and creative industries, considering that most countries have less creative industries and mostly they are tangible culture-based?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, and, definitely.
Well, the model that we are developing right now would like actually to consider not only, so we are not thinking at the Italian system, because obviously if we only consider that, it will be unbalanced. This is the reason why we are taking into account many different classifications that have been already adopted at a European level. But you are right, because actually they are, in a certain sense, in a certain sense, pays the tribute to a cultural system that is quite well developed almost in all European countries. When it comes to countries where creative industries are not so well developed, or they are not so so strong in terms of production, in terms of job opportunities, in terms of connections with other countries and other creative workers, it might some issues may arise. And I think, in any case, that if you look at our model, and if you like, I can try to share the screen again to show you the model. Just a second. So when we look at this model, we tried to consider and to add all possible creative industries. If this model could be adopted in all the countries, it's something that we have to verify, still verify, but it's basically is a comprehensive of all possible creative and cultural expressions. So probably you won't have all these elements to be considered in your country, but I guess that probably most of them could be easily found. If not, it could be also interesting to talk, or to, if you have some suggestion to something that we do not consider for the less creative, industrialized area. Because I guess that, for instance, the heritage section could be quite easily adopted in almost all the countries. The tangible culture, in a way, is also quite easily adopted. Probably the media or functional creation and new media can be less frequent, probably not, but the functional creation media, because they also meant a more specialized and digitalized development. Consider that also in our reality here in L'Aquila, in central Italy, where we are staying, it is not so easy to find all these different elements. So I think that our model is aiming at considering all possible actions referred to cultural and creative industries. And probably you can adopt them to also less developed countries from this point of view, because they are really as broader as we could do at the moment. But if you have any suggestion, if you have any elements that you think might be considered differently or might not be considered, or something that we did not consider in our graphic, you are more than welcome actually to share with us your comments, or letting us know what actually you think that a a model should be to be really because actually this is again in terms of inclusivity. We are probably thinking as a European country, and we are not really considering what could be useful in other geographical areas. But at the moment, actually, our model is included in a European project. And so this is also the framework that we are following. I don't know, Tamika, if you like to add another comments to this. Tamika probably is okay.
She's okay with your answer. Okay.
Yes, because basically being part of a European project, we focused on our geographical framework was actually this one. Probably we could, in the end of the DISCE project, we could think at a further debate or further organization of a taxonomy that is more specifically thought and designed for other geographical areas.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, let me say thanks, Valeria, for your presentation. And of course, thanks to all the attendees to these GSSI webinars. So have a nice day and goodbye to everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.